The rain fell harder than usual that evening, washing the city streets in silver light. Cars hissed past, umbrellas tilted like wilted flowers, and under the flicker of a broken street lamp stood a little girl, maybe 8, maybe 9, clutching a small rag doll to her chest. Her hair was soaked, her shoes were torn, and her eyes, wide, tired, and far too old for her age, searched every passerby with quiet desperation. "Please, someone buy my doll," she whispered, her voice trembling through the storm. "I just need enough to buy my mama's medicine." People walked faster, their eyes pretending not to hear. The world had grown used to closing its heart. The doll wasn't much, a patchwork of old cloth, a missing button eye, and threadbare limbs, but it was all she had left from her mother's better days. Her name was Lily, and that doll had been her best friend since she could remember. Selling it wasn't just hard, it was like giving away a piece of herself. Across the street, a black luxury car idled quietly, the tinted glass hiding the man inside. He watched her from behind a reflection of city lights, a man in his late 30s, dressed in tailored silence. His name was Ethan Blake, a billionaire whose fortune could buy almost anything, except peace. He didn't know why he'd stopped. Maybe it was curiosity. Maybe it was guilt. Or maybe, deep down, something in that little girl's eyes reminded him of a time when he wasn't made of numbers and deals. He opened the car door, the rain immediately greeting him like judgment. He walked toward her, his polished shoes splashing in puddles. "Why are you out here alone, kid?" he asked, his tone calm but distant. Lily looked up, startled. "I'm not begging, sir. I'm selling." She lifted the doll with both hands, raindrops gliding down her fingers. "She's all I have. But Mama's sick, and the man at the pharmacy said medicine costs more now." Ethan's chest tightened, not because of pity, but something deeper, the memory of his own mother coughing in a small apartment, when he too had nothing but hope and hunger. He stared at the doll. It was worthless to the world, but to her, it was everything. "How much?" he asked softly. She hesitated, unsure if she'd heard right. "Just enough for one bottle, sir. The pharmacist said it's $38. He reached into his coat, pulled out his wallet, and handed her a $100 bill. "Keep it, and keep your doll." Her lips parted in disbelief. I can't take that, sir. You have to take something. Please." Ethan studied her small, trembling hands, the stubborn pride that refused charity. Against his will, a faint smile tugged at his mouth. "All right," he said, taking the doll gently. "Then it's a deal." For the first time that day, Lily's smile bloomed, shy, fragile, but real. She bowed slightly, water dripping from her hair. "Thank you, sir. Mama's going to get better now." As she ran off into the rain, clutching the money to her chest, Ethan stood frozen. The doll hung from his hand, soaked and limp. For a strange moment, it felt heavier than it should, as if it carried more than fabric and thread. He didn't know that by tomorrow, that same doll would unravel secrets he never wanted to remember, and force him to face the kind of fear no amount of money could buy. Before we dive deeper, tell me, where in the world are you watching from? It amazes me how far a single story can travel. Drop your city. Let's see how wide kindness still spreads. The next morning, sunlight spilled into Ethan's penthouse, all glass, chrome, and silence. He placed the doll on his kitchen counter, intending to throw it away. But something stopped him. Its missing eye stared back, as if pleading not to be abandoned again. He sighed, annoyed at himself. He didn't have time for childish sentiment. Yet somehow, when he left for his office, he found himself placing the doll on the passenger seat beside him. Traffic crawled, people honked, phones buzzed, the noise of a world too busy to care. But in that moment, the memory of the girl's smile echoed in his head like a song he couldn't forget. At his company, meetings filled the hours. Investors talked about profits, mergers, and markets, the cold pulse of business. But Ethan's thoughts kept drifting back to that rainy night. He wondered if the girl's mother had gotten better. He wondered why it mattered. That evening, as he was leaving, something unexpected happened. Something small, but it changed everything. A delivery boy arrived at his office lobby holding a brown paper bag. "For Mr. Ethan Blake," he said, handing it over. There was no sender, No address, just one folded note taped to the side. Ethan opened it slowly. Inside were 2 small cookies, wrapped in napkins, and a handwritten message in a child's shaky letters. "Thank you, sir." Mama smiled today for the first time. From Lily. He felt something sting behind his eyes, a feeling he hadn't allowed himself in years. He folded the note, placed it in his wallet, and whispered, "You're welcome, kid." He didn't know that fate had just begun weaving a story between them, one that would soon test the limits of his soul. That night, Ethan couldn't sleep. The city glittered outside his window, but inside, the silence pressed heavy. The doll still sat on his bedside table, its stitched smile faint in the dim light. He turned onto his side, watching it like one might watch a ghost. For the first time in years, he thought of his own mother, her soft laugh, her warm hands, the way she'd hum when the world was falling apart. He remembered her illness too, and the helplessness that came with not being able to afford the medicine she needed. He'd buried that memory deep beneath success, luxury, and control. But the little girl, Lily, had unearthed it without even knowing. By morning, he made a decision. He instructed his assistant, "Find out where the medicine from the 9th Street pharmacy was sold yesterday evening." A little girl bought it. Cash, small bills. "I need her name." The assistant raised an eyebrow. "Sir, that might be private information." Ethan's tone hardened. "Then make it not private." Within hours, he had the address, a rundown building on the east side of the city, the kind most people tried not to see. He drove there himself. The hallway smelled of damp and dust. Wallpaper peeled from the walls like old memories. When he reached the door labeled 3B, he hesitated, then knocked softly. The door creaked open, and there she was, Lily, still wearing the same faded blue dress, though now with cleaner cheeks and bright eyes. Her face lit up. "You're the man from yesterday." He smiled, awkwardly unsure of what to do with his hands. "Ethan," he said. "My name's Ethan. How's your mother?" "She's better," Lily said proudly. "The medicine helped her sleep." Then her expression softened. "We wanted to thank you, sir. Mama said people like you are angels sent by God." Before he could respond, a woman's weak voice called from inside, "Lily, who is it?" Lily turned. "It's the kind man who helped us, Mama." Her mother appeared, leaning against the doorway, thin, pale, her eyes gentle but tired. She looked no older than 30. "You must be Mr. Blake," she said softly. "Thank you. I don't know what we would have done without your help." Ethan felt strangely humbled. He wasn't used to gratitude. In his world, people only thanked him when they needed something. But this was different. Pure, simple, undeserved. He noticed a sewing machine on the table, threads tangled around it. "Do you sew?" he asked. "Yes," she replied with a faint smile. "I make small dolls and dresses to sell at the market. But after I got sick, I couldn't work." Lily ran to the corner and picked up another doll, smaller, newer. Mama makes them from old clothes people throw away. Ethan looked around. No TV, no heater. Barely any food, yet the place felt warmer than any mansion he'd ever lived in. He nodded slowly. "You know, I think the world needs more of these." He pointed at the dolls. "Would you be interested in making more if I help with materials and space?" The mother's eyes widened. "Sir, we couldn't possibly." "You can," he interrupted gently. "Think of it as an investment. No contracts, no obligations. Just a chance to do what you love, and maybe earn enough to live comfortably." Tears welled in her eyes. "I don't know how to thank you." "Just promise me you'll take care of Lily," Ethan said quietly. Lily tugged at his sleeve, smiling up at him. "I will, sir. I promise." As Ethan left their small apartment, he felt something shift inside him, something he couldn't name. It wasn't charity. It wasn't guilt. It was something far rarer. Connection. He drove through the city, past the glass towers he built, past the lights that once defined his worth, and for the first time, he realized how empty they'd all felt. Maybe this, helping strangers, seeing a real smile, was what he'd been missing all along. If you were there in that moment, what would you have done? Be honest. Comment your answer below. And if words fail you, just hit like to prove that compassion still matters. The following week, Ethan arranged a small workspace for Lily's mother, Grace, in one of his unused company storerooms. He bought fabrics, threads, needles, and hired a retired seamstress named Martha to assist her. Grace couldn't believe it. "This place is bigger than our whole apartment," she whispered, her hands trembling as she touched the fabric rolls. Ethan smiled faintly. "Then let's fill it with dreams." Soon, the room echoed with laughter, the soft hum of the sewing machine, and Lily's giggles as she helped tie ribbons on the dolls. One afternoon, Ethan stopped by unannounced and found them singing together, an old lullaby his mother used to hum. For a second, the past and present blurred. He stood there, unseen, a lump forming in his throat. Grace looked up, smiling when she noticed him. "We were just finishing the last one for today," she said. "Would you like to see?" She held up a doll, this one perfect, with golden thread hair and a small paper heart stitched inside its chest. "It's for you," Lily said proudly. "Mama says every heart deserves another chance to feel again." Ethan took the doll carefully. For a moment, he didn't speak. The air between them shimmered with something quiet and sacred, gratitude that needed no words. Outside, the sun dipped low, painting the city in gold. Ethan looked at them both and realized he hadn't just helped them. They were helping him too, piece by piece, stitch by stitch, teaching him how to feel again. Days turned into weeks, and the little workshop began to change more than just Grace's life. It changed Ethan's. He started visiting more often, not as a billionaire benefactor, but as a quiet observer who found peace in the rhythm of a needle and thread. He'd bring coffee for Grace, cookies for Lily, and sometimes just sit near the window, watching the two of them work in harmony. The way they smiled through struggle reminded him of something he'd long forgotten, that life wasn't measured by what you owned, but by who you healed. One evening, as dusk wrapped the sky in orange and rose, Lily handed him a small box wrapped in pink fabric. "It's a gift," she said shyly. Ethan raised an eyebrow. "For me?" She nodded. "Mama said you should never visit empty-handed, so I made you something." He opened it carefully. Inside was a tiny version of his mother's locket, made entirely from fabric and string. The details were imperfect, but the heart behind it was flawless. He looked at her, speechless. "How did you know?" Lily smiled softly. "You looked sad once when you saw Mama's old necklace. So I thought, maybe you miss someone too." Her words hit him like a soft hammer to the chest. He cleared his throat, looking away. "You're very observant for your age, Lily." She giggled. "Mama says I'm nosy, but I just listen when people's eyes talk." That night, Ethan sat in his car for a long time before driving home. He placed a little fabric locket on the dashboard and stared at it under the dim light. Somehow, that simple piece of thread carried more truth than all his expensive art. The next morning, Ethan arrived early at the workshop, but something was different. Grace wasn't there. Only Lily sat by the window, her face pale, her doll clutched tightly in her hands. "Lily," he said softly, "where's your mother?" Her eyes shimmered. She said she was tired last night. I tried to wake her this morning, but she wouldn't open her eyes. Ethan froze. His breath caught. "Where is she now?" "The hospital," Lily whispered. "They took her in an ambulance." Without hesitation, Ethan scooped her up and rushed to his car. His chest felt like it was closing. The hospital corridors smelled like antiseptic and fear. Nurses hurried past. Machines beeped in distant rooms. When they reached Grace's ward, Ethan stopped at the doorway. Grace lay on the bed, her skin pale as snow, her breathing shallow. A nurse adjusted her fore and glanced up at Ethan. "Your family?" He hesitated. Yes, I am." The nurse nodded sympathetically. "She's in critical condition. Her heart is very weak. We'll do what we can, but—" The rest of her sentence vanished into static. Lily climbed onto the chair beside her mother and held her hand. "Mama, it's me. I brought Mr. Ethan. He'll make you better. Right, sir?" Ethan's throat burned. "We'll try everything. Lily, I promise." For the next 2 days, Ethan barely left the hospital. He used his connections to get the best doctors, the best equipment, but money couldn't fight time, and time was cruel. On the third night, as the monitors hummed quietly, Grace stirred. Her eyes fluttered open, weak but aware. "Ethan," she whispered, "you've done too much already." He shook his head. "You don't get to say that." She smiled faintly. "You remind me of my late husband, always trying to fix the world alone." "Where is he now?" Ethan asked quietly. "Gone," she murmured. "An accident when Lily was just 2. Since then, it's been just us." He swallowed hard. "You're not alone anymore, Grace. I'll take care of her. Both of you." A tear escaped the corner of her eye. "Promise me one thing. If I don't make it, don't let Lily forget to smile." Ethan's voice broke. "Don't talk like that. You'll make it." But she only smiled again, that kind of soft, knowing smile that mothers wear when they're saying goodbye without words. Outside the window, thunder rolled across the sky, echoing the heaviness in his chest. Have you ever had someone help you when no one else would? Write yes, and tell me their name. Maybe gratitude can travel further than we think. Hours passed, but Ethan didn't move. He sat beside Lily, who had fallen asleep on his arm, her small fingers wrapped around his sleeve. He looked at Grace, at the machine surrounding her, and for the first time in years, he prayed, not as a businessman bargaining with fate, but as a broken son asking for mercy. When dawn came, Grace's breathing grew softer. The monitors began to slow. A nurse rushed in, followed by a doctor, but Ethan already knew. He stood there, frozen in the quietest storm of his life, as Lily stirred awake. "Is Mama better now?" she asked, rubbing her eyes. Ethan couldn't speak. He knelt beside her, tears spilling down his face as he pulled her into his arms. "She's resting now, Lily. She's free from pain." Lily clung to him, sobbing into his coat, her cries small and shattered. Outside, the world kept moving. Cars, people, laughter, all oblivious to the moment two hearts broke in silence. And somewhere deep within Ethan, something shifted again, not in pity, but in purpose. He wasn't going to walk away. Not this time. The days that followed felt like a blur. White walls, sympathy flowers, the scent of rain that wouldn't stop. Grace's funeral was small. Only a few neighbors, the nurse from the hospital, and Ethan with Lily by his side. She wore a simple white dress, her doll clutched tightly in both hands, as if holding on to her mother's love. The pastor spoke softly, his words fading into the gray wind. Lily didn't cry this time. She just stared at the wooden box, her eyes hollow yet calm, like a child who had cried too much to have any tears left. When it was over, Ethan walked her back to the car. The silence between them was heavy, not awkward, but fragile, like glass. She looked up at him suddenly. "Where will I go now?" Ethan hesitated. He hadn't planned that far, but the thought of leaving her alone in that empty apartment was unbearable. "You'll stay with me for a while," he said gently, "until we figure things out." Her eyes widened. "In your big house?" He nodded. "In my big house." That evening, the penthouse that once echoed with emptiness now had small footsteps pattering across its marble floors. Lily wandered from room to room, eyes wide in wonder. "It's like a castle," she whispered. "But why does it feel so sad?" Ethan froze. The question cut deep. Maybe it was waiting for someone to smile in it again, he replied quietly. Over the next few days, Lily brought a warmth Ethan didn't realize he was missing. She filled the silence with chatter, drew pictures for him while he worked, and left small sticky notes on his desk that read things like "Don't forget to smile today," and "Coffee makes you nice." Every night, she'd place her doll on the table beside him while they had dinner. "She likes company," she'd say, as if the doll were listening. And maybe, in a strange way, it was. One morning, Ethan drove Lily to her new school. She was nervous, clutching her doll tightly. "What if they don't like me?" she asked. He smiled, adjusting her backpack strap. "You don't need everyone to like you, Lily. You just need one person to be kind. Start with that." That line would stay with her forever. The first few weeks were hard. Some kids tease her for bringing a doll to school, others for her old shoes. But Lily never told Ethan. She didn't want to be a burden. Instead, she'd smile every time he picked her up, pretending everything was fine. One afternoon, he found out by accident. He arrived early and saw her sitting alone under the schoolyard tree, her doll in her lap, the other kids laughing at a distance. His chest tightened. That evening, at dinner, he asked softly, "Rough day?" She looked down. Sometimes people are mean when they don't understand. He studied her, seeing so much of grace in her, that quiet strength. "Do you want me to talk to the school?" She shook her head quickly. "No, sir. You said kindness starts with one person. I think I'll start with me." He smiled faintly, pride flickering in his eyes. "You sound like someone your mother would be proud of." Lily smiled back. "She told me once, even if the world forgets kindness, I shouldn't." That night, while she slept, Ethan sat in his study, staring at the city lights. Her words echoed in his head like a vow he hadn't known he'd made. Maybe that was it. Maybe this was his purpose now. Not just to care for Lily, but to carry forward what Grace had lived for, love without agenda. He opened his laptop and began typing furiously. A new project proposal, a foundation to support single parents, struggling families, and children in need of medical aid. He named it the Grace Initiative. The next morning, when he told Lily, her eyes lit up. "Mama's name." He nodded. "It'll help people like her, people who need a hand, not pity." She jumped into his arms, giggling. She'll be so happy in heaven. And for the first time since her passing, Ethan laughed. A real, unguarded laugh that filled the house with life again. "Now it's your turn. Share one small good thing you did recently. Write it below so others remember that humanity still lives. Your story might light someone's path tonight." The weeks turned into months. The foundation launched quietly but grew fast. Donations poured in, volunteers signed up, and everywhere Ethan went, he saw Lily's influence, her notes, her laughter, her belief that goodness could multiply. But just as peace began to settle in, life, unpredictable as ever, had other plans. One rainy evening, Ethan received a call from the foundation's accountant. His voice was tense. "Sir, we found discrepancies in the financials. Large ones. Someone's been siphoning funds from the Grace Initiative." Ethan's heart sank. "How much?" "Nearly $500,000. He gripped the phone tighter. "Find out who. Now." The next day, the truth hit harder than he imagined. Someone from his inner circle, a trusted partner, had been embezzling the funds. A man Ethan had once called a brother. The betrayal burned deeper than money could ever replace. That night, as thunder cracked outside and Lily slept peacefully down the hall, Ethan sat in the dark, the doll in his hands again. The stitched smile looked at him as if reminding him of Grace's words. "Don't let Lily forget to smile." He exhaled, steadying his heart. "I won't," he whispered, "even if the world tries to take it away again." But deep inside, he knew the storm wasn't over. The following days felt like a storm beneath calm skies. Ethan went about his routine, dropping Lily at school, attending board meetings, overseeing the foundation, but underneath his collected exterior burned quiet fury. He couldn't understand how someone could steal from something built on love and loss. The betrayal gnawed at him, not just as a businessman, but as a man who had finally started to believe in good again. One night, when Lily was asleep, Ethan sat alone in his office with the audit file spread across his desk. Rain battered the windows as he read line after line until one name kept resurfacing: Marcus Hale, his oldest friend, the man who had helped him build his empire from the ground up. Ethan's hands trembled. Marcus wasn't just a partner, he was family. He'd been there when Ethan's mother passed away, when his company nearly collapsed years ago. And now this. He leaned back, closing his eyes. He could almost hear Grace's voice in the quiet. "Don't let anger turn your heart into what hurt it." But it was too late for peace that night. The next morning, Ethan walked into the foundation headquarters unannounced. Marcus was there, laughing with staff, pretending nothing had happened. When he saw Ethan, his face paled slightly. "Ethan," he started, forcing a smile. "Didn't expect you in today." Ethan laid the audit file on the desk between them. "You want to explain this?" Marcus looked down, eyes scanning the evidence, forward transfers, dummy accounts, signatures. He tried to laugh it off. "It's not what it looks like." Ethan's jaw tightened. "Then tell me what it is." A long silence. Finally, Marcus sighed. You changed, Ethan. Ever since that girl and her mother came into your life, it's like you forgot the business that made you who you are. I was just taking what I deserved before you gave it all away to strangers. Ethan stared at him, disbelief turning to disgust. Deserved? His voice cracked. You stole from children who needed medicine, from mothers who had nothing. You think that's what you deserve. Marcus stood, defensive now. You wouldn't understand. You're too blinded by guilt, trying to fix your past through charity. The room felt colder. Ethan's voice dropped to a near whisper. You're right about one thing. I am trying to fix something. But it's not my past, it's my soul. Security entered quietly after Ethan's nod. Marcus didn't fight. He just looked at him one last time, his expression somewhere between regret and hatred, before being escorted out. Ethan stood there, his reflection in the office glass looking older than he felt. For the first time in years, tears came easily, not out of weakness, but out of loss. He turned off the lights, took the elevator down, and drove aimlessly through the city. The rain had stopped, leaving behind streets that shimmered like glass. He ended up at the small apartment where Grace and Lily once lived. The door was still there, faded paint, number 3B barely visible. He walked inside slowly, his footsteps echoing in the emptiness. The air smelled faintly of fabric and dust, as if time itself had been holding its breath. He sat on the floor, clutching the doll Lily had left behind one day, the same one from that first rainy evening. The stitches were looser now, its button eye still missing, but its presence still spoke volumes. He whispered, You were right, Grace. I'm still learning how to keep her smiling. A small sound interrupted his thoughts, the creak of the door. Mr. Ethan. Lily's voice was soft, sleepy. She stood there in her pajamas, holding a blanket. You weren't in your room. He wiped his eyes quickly. I just needed some air. She walked over, sat beside him, and leaned her head on his shoulder. You miss Mama again? He nodded. Every day. She smiled faintly. Me too. But Mama said she'd be proud if we stayed kind, even when we hurt. Her words were light, innocent, but they pierced through everything heavy inside him. Ethan placed his arm around her, drawing her closer. She'd be very proud of you, Lily. They sat there in silence, surrounded by memories, broken, but somehow healing together. If that moment hit you hard, leave a red heart hash. Sometimes one little symbol says what our hearts can't. The next day, Ethan made an announcement that stunned everyone. Despite the foundation's setback, he decided to rebuild it, publicly, transparently, and stronger than before. We lost money, he told the board, but we didn't lose purpose. The Grace Initiative isn't about wealth, it's about worth. Lily stood in the front row during the press event, her small hands clutching a new doll, one she'd made herself. Reporters snapped photos of her, whispering about the Billionaire's ward. But Ethan didn't care. He wasn't hiding behind charity anymore. He was standing inside it. Later that night, after the noise had quieted and the house was still again, Ethan tucked Lily into bed. She held his hand sleepily. Are we happy now, Mr. Ethan? He smiled. We're getting there. Outside, the moonlight spread softly across the room, touching the doll's stitched smile, the same one that had started it all. But in the quiet, Ethan couldn't shake the feeling that Grace wasn't gone, that somehow, through Lily, she was still guiding him towards something bigger than redemption, peace. Months passed, and the world seemed to finally soften its grip on them. The foundation was thriving again, this time with honesty at its core. Families were receiving aid, children were getting scholarships, and every week Ethan saw new smiles that reminded him why he'd started this journey. But peace, as he learned, was fragile. One chilly evening in December, Ethan was driving home from a late meeting when his phone buzzed. It was Lily's school. The principal's voice came through the line, anxious. Mr. Blake, I'm so sorry to bother you at this hour, but Lily isn't feeling well. She fainted during choir practice. Ethan's heart sank. Is she conscious? She is now, but we recommend taking her to the hospital. She mentioned chest pain. He didn't wait for another word. Tires screeched as he sped toward the school, panic clawing at his chest. When he arrived, Lily was sitting on a bench, pale and shivering, her doll clutched tightly in her arms. She smiled weakly. "I'm okay, Mr. Ethan. Just a little dizzy." He crouched in front of her, brushing hair from her forehead. "You scared me, kid." At the hospital, doctors ran tests while Ethan paced the waiting room. Every sound, every beat from behind those walls, made him flinch. Finally, the doctor came out, his expression careful. "Mr. Blake, the tests show a congenital heart defect, one that's been worsening for years. It's serious. She'll need surgery soon." Ethan felt the world tilt. Surgery? But she's just a child. "I know," the doctor said gently, "and she's strong. But time isn't on our side." That night, Ethan sat beside Lily's hospital bed, watching her sleep. Machines hum quietly, their rhythm syncing with her fragile breaths. He whispered, more to himself than to her, "Not her too. Please, not her." When she woke, her voice was soft but steady. "You look sad again, Mr. Ethan." "Don't be. I'm going to be fine." He forced a smile. "You don't have to be brave for me." "I'm not being brave," she said. "I just know Mama's watching. She'll take care of me." Her innocence broke him in ways money never could. Over the next few days, Ethan refused to leave the hospital. He slept in the chair beside her, answered calls half-heartedly, and ignored the world outside those sterile walls. But one evening, as he stepped out to grab coffee, he saw someone waiting in the lobby, Marcus Hale. Ethan froze, rage flickering like a spark in dry air. "You have some nerve showing up here." Marcus raised his hands. "I didn't come to fight. I came to apologize." Ethan's jaw clenched. "You think an apology fixes what you did?" "No," Marcus said quietly, "but I heard about the girl. I wanted to help. I still have contacts in the medical board. There's a surgeon, one of the best, who can take her case immediately, free of cost." Ethan narrowed his eyes, unsure whether to believe him. "Why would you do that after everything?" Marcus looked down, shame carving deep lines across his face. "Because you were right. I lost my soul somewhere chasing what I thought I deserved. Let me do one thing right. Ethan, just one." For a long moment, neither spoke. The sound of distant rain filled the silence between them. Finally, Ethan exhaled. "If you're lying—" "I'm not," Marcus interrupted. "The girl doesn't deserve to pay for my sins." The next day, the new surgeon arrived, a woman named Dr. Rivera, calm and confident. She reviewed Lily's scans and nodded. "We'll operate tomorrow morning. She's young, and that's in her favor." That night, Ethan sat beside Lily again, her small hand in his. She opened her eyes and smiled faintly. "Is it tomorrow?" He nodded. "Yeah, but you're in good hands. The best." She squeezed his fingers. "Will you be here when I wake up?" "Always," he said, voice trembling. "I promise." She giggled softly. "That's what Mama used to say." He brushed her hair back gently. Then she was a very wise woman. The next morning came faster than he wanted. Nurses rolled Lily toward the surgery ward, the wheels squeaking softly on the floor. Ethan followed until they reached the restricted doors. She turned her head toward him, her voice barely a whisper. "Mr. Ethan, if I see Mama, should I tell her you miss her?" His throat tightened. "Tell her every day," he said, smiling through tears. "And tell her we're keeping her promise." As the doors closed, he stood there, powerless, praying and afraid. Hours passed. The surgery light flicked from red to green, but time had long since lost meaning. When the doctor finally came out, Ethan's breath caught in his chest. Dr. Rivera's eyes softened. It was close, but she made it. She's a fighter. Ethan sank into the nearest chair, tears spilling freely. Thank God. The relief washed over him like sunlight after endless rain. Be honest. Could you forgive after what they did? Type forgive if you could, or never if it would break you too deeply. That evening, Marcus appeared again, standing quietly outside the ICU. He didn't say a word. Ethan walked up to him, their eyes meeting after years of trust and betrayal. Thank you, Ethan said finally. Marcus nodded, his eyes glistening. Take care of her, Ethan. I will, he replied. We both will. Then Marcus turned and walked away, leaving behind a silence that didn't sting anymore, only peace. In the days that followed, Lily recovered slowly, her smile returning piece by piece. Every breath she took felt like a miracle Ethan didn't deserve but had been blessed with anyway. And for the first time in years, he allowed himself to believe that maybe forgiveness wasn't weakness, maybe it was a final step toward freedom. Spring arrived gently, with morning sunlight filtering through hospital windows and the smell of fresh flowers following the breeze. Lily was sitting up now, color back in her cheeks, her laughter filling the quiet holes that once echoed with fear. Ethan watched her from the doorway, hands in his pockets, a small smile tugging at his lips. She was playing with her doll again, the same one from that night under the rain. Its threads were worn, its fabric faded, but it was still whole, just like her. When she noticed him, she waved. Mr. Ethan, look, she got a new button eye. He walked in, feigning surprise. Really? Who fixed her? Lily grinned proudly. The nurse helped me. She said everyone deserves to see clearly again, even dolls. Ethan chuckled softly, his chest tightening with quiet gratitude. Then she's right. As she set the doll beside her pillow, her expression grew thoughtful. Mr. Ethan, can I ask you something? Of course. Why do people get sad so much, even when they have nice things? He sat down beside her, choosing his words carefully. Because sometimes we forget what's important. We chase the world and forget the hearts in it. But if we remember love, even when it hurts, sadness can't stay forever. She tilted her head, processing his words the way only a child could, simple, sincere, and full of wonder. So love is like medicine. He smiled. The best kind. A few weeks later, Lily was discharged from the hospital. Ethan held her hand as they walked out into the sunshine, both of them squinting at the brightness like people seeing color for the first time. Back home, the penthouse didn't feel empty anymore. There were drawings on the refrigerator, ribbons on the plants, and a calendar on the wall where Lily had marked every day since her surgery with a red heart. The Grace Initiative had grown stronger than ever. Letters poured in daily, stories of families helped, lives changed, and small acts of kindness inspired by Lily's story. Ethan would often sit with her in the evenings, reading those letters aloud. One of them said, I was going to give up, but your story reminded me that kindness can still heal. Lily clapped her hands every time he read one. See? Mama's dream is growing. He nodded, eyes glistening. Yes, it is. That summer, the foundation hosted a charity event in Grace's honor. The hall shimmered with soft lights, children's laughter, and music that sounded like hope. Ethan stood on stage, looking out at hundreds of people who had come not for him, but for what he stood for. He cleared his throat. A little girl once sold her only doll to buy medicine for her mother. That small act of love started something bigger than both of us. Tonight, I want to remind you, compassion doesn't need wealth. It needs courage. The audience erupted into applause, and Ethan glanced toward the front row where Lily sat, her legs swinging, her smile brighter than the chandeliers above her. After the event, she ran up to him and hugged him tightly. Mama would be so proud, Mr. Ethan. He crouched down, hugging her back. So am I, Lily, of both of us. They walked out together under the evening sky, the city lights glowing around them like silent witnesses. Later that night, as he tucked her into bed, she whispered, Do you think people will remember Mama? Ethan brushed her hair gently. As long as we keep loving like she taught us, she'll never be forgotten. She smiled, half asleep, her small voice drifting like a prayer. Then we'll love forever. He sat beside her long after she closed her eyes, watching her chest rise and fall with peaceful rhythm. The sound was the purest music he'd ever heard. He looked around the room. Soft night light, drawings of hearts and angels on the walls, the doll seated upright beside the bed, and he realized something. Grace hadn't just saved his soul. She'd given him a reason to live for others. And through Lily, that reason would never fade. If you believe love still wins, comment Amen. Let's fill this section with hope. Maybe someone scrolling right now needs to see it. As months turned into a year, the Grace Initiative expanded beyond the city, new centers opened, providing free medical aid and education. Ethan rarely took credit. He always said, "It started with a doll." Lily grew stronger, her laughter echoing through every event, every meeting. People began calling her the heart of the Grace Initiative. But Ethan knew she was more than that. She was proof that even the smallest act of love could rebuild a broken world. And in quiet moments, when he'd look at the framed photo of Grace hanging above his desk, he'd whisper, "We did it." The pain hadn't vanished. It had simply transformed, from grief into purpose, from loss into light. Years slipped by quietly, like pages of a story you don't realize you're living until it's almost finished. The city had changed, new buildings, new faces, but Ethan's world remained beautifully simple. He had his work, his foundation, and the little girl who had somehow become the heartbeat of his life. Lily was 13 now, still with the same gentle eyes but growing taller, stronger, braver. She helped at the foundation after school, painting murals in the children's wing and reading stories to the younger kids. Her laughter was still the same, soft, contagious, filled with light. Every now and then, she'd still hold that old doll, now kept in a glass case at the foundation's entrance. A small golden plaque beneath it read, "The doll that started it all, a gift of love." Visitors often stopped to look at it, unaware how much pain and beauty it carried. But Lily always smiled at it like an old friend. "You did good," she'd whisper, tapping the glass. "Mama would be proud." Ethan watched her from a distance one afternoon as she stood there, sunlight glinting off the case. He realized just how much he had changed his life, how she'd softened every edge he once sharpened with ambition. Later that day, they visited the small cemetery where Grace rested. Lily knelt beside the headstone, placing fresh white lilies and a note folded neatly into a heart. Ethan stood quietly behind her. "What did you write?" he asked softly. Lily smiled without looking up. "I told her that I'm happy, that I'm loved, and that I still remember what she said." Ethan's voice wavered. "And what did she say?" She turned to him, eyes bright as the sky. "That love isn't about how long someone stays, but how deeply they leave you changed." He couldn't speak. The words clung to the air like a benediction. They stood there in silence for a while, the breeze moving through the trees, the city hum fading into nothing. As they walked back toward the car, Lily slipped her hand into his. "Mr. Ethan, do you ever get scared that one day you'll forget her?" He shook his head gently. "No, sweetheart, because remembering isn't about the mind, it's about the heart, and the heart doesn't forget love." She squeezed his hand. "Then I'll remember both of you forever." That night, back home, Ethan found himself in his study, the same room where he once buried himself in silence and wake. But now, it felt different. On his desk were photos of smiling children, thank-you letters from families, and drawings Lily had made over the years. One of him, Grace, and her, all holding hands under a rain of stars. He leaned back in his chair, eyes stinging with emotion. He thought of the man he used to be, cold, guarded, untouchable. And then he thought of that one rainy night, years ago, when a small girl with a torn dress and trembling voice had tried to sell her only doll. That moment had rewritten his entire life. He looked toward the window, the city lights twinkling like scattered memories, and whispered, "You saved me. Lily, both of you did." Suddenly, there was a soft knock on the door. Lily peeked in. "You're not sleeping again, are you?" Ethan smiled. "Just thinking." She walked in, now tall enough that her head reached his shoulder when she hugged him. "Mama used to say thinking too much makes your heart tired. Come on, it's bedtime." He chuckled. "Since when do you tell me what to do?" "Since forever," she said, grinning. "Now come on." He turned off the light, following her down the hall. The house, once haunted by loneliness, now echoed with warmth. As she headed to her room, she paused. "Mr. Ethan." "Yes, Lily? Do you think Mama knows we're okay now?" He smiled softly. "She doesn't just know, Lily. She's the reason we are." Lily nodded, her smile small but certain. "Good night." "Good night, kid." He lingered in the hallway for a moment, watching her door close. Then he looked upward, whispering one last thank you, not just to Grace, but to the life she had left behind for him to protect. The house settled into quiet again, but this time it was a peaceful kind of silence, the kind that comes after healing, after forgiveness, after finding meaning in pain. He walked to the living room window, the night breeze cool against his face. Outside, the city light shimmered, reflections of everything he'd lost and everything he'd found. He whispered into the stillness, "We did it, Grace. She smiles every day." And in that moment, he could almost feel her presence, warm, invisible, but real, like love that had never left, just changed its form. If this story moved you, don't scroll past quietly. Tap like, not for me, but for the soul who carried this pain and still stayed kind. One click can be your way of saying, "I felt you." As the years continued, the Grace Initiative became a symbol, not of wealth or charity, but of redemption through compassion. People spoke of it not as an organization, but as a story about a man who found his heart in the rain, and a little girl who reminded the world that kindness never dies. And somewhere, framed behind glass, the doll still sat, her stitched smile eternal. She didn't just start a movement. She started love again,